What is up, everybody? It is Andrew Esquire, American attorney over here in Asia. And of course, this is Legal Mindset. We teach you to be your own judge. I am, of course, wearing black today because we are talking all about the Grimdark today. We are talking about Warhammer 40K, also some more broad topics. I think we'll get a little broad, but we're talking about Warhammer 40K, which is a very highly requested topic. So much so that I had a good fan of my channel reach out to me and say, hey, look, you've got to do this. Here's a list of people I think I can get, and managed to, I believe through sliding in and mentioning me in the comments, managed to connect me with a certain individual who's pretty fairly well known in the Warhammer community. And that would be Arch. Arch, welcome to the channel.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. We're both in weird time zones. So my primary audience is in the United States, typically, East Coast, as most people are in the East Coast. So I know I spoke to you in East Coast terms, but it's about what, 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning where you're at?
3 a.m. Yes, but luckily I'm a night bird, so not too big of an issue.
Okay, yeah. So both of us, it's early in the morning here. It's of course 9 a.m. over here for me in Bangkok. So guys, please make sure you are smashing the like button for these morning views as you come in today. Now, I know that I know about you, and I certainly know about you, and the way I found your channel was when I was getting into Warhammer 40K. And full disclosure, I have never played the tabletop once in my life. I've played some of the games, but mostly I enjoy the books. I've read all of the Caiaphas Cain series, all the Gaunt series, many of the random other books. I'm really interested in most of the Terra-related books, the ones about the Horus Heresy. So anything back then, I've pretty much read. So I am primarily a book reader. But one thing that I really loved your channel for was for the lore. And you do have 2 channels. One is Arch, which is about Warhammer lore, and one is the Archcast. So I found you through your channel, and I'll pull it up right now and give it some view here. Over here, Arch, with 274,000 subs, which very impressive.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
And the first thing I watched, which actually you can see here, I was rewatching, was your Siege of Vrax a series, which you can even see I'm halfway through this one of rewatching it. That was actually what introduced me to your channel and you specifically, because frankly, listening to the lore and consuming the lore is almost like consuming another book. Because the lore for Warhammer is so deep that you can go on for hours and hours, and certainly you do. So that's how I got to know you. But perhaps before I get too far, maybe you should introduce yourself, kind of how you got into Warhammer, and a little bit about your background.
Certainly. Right. So you've already seen the lore channel. That's what I started with. I started with that one because Creative Assembly announced Total War Warhammer years ago now, and I feel like, okay, that's great. That's 2 things I love. Let's talk about it. And Warhammer I got into as a kid when my grandmother accidentally bought me a Warhammer Armies book, not having the faintest clue what it was. So that's how I got started there. And eventually our ongoing culture war began moving into Warhammer, and I figured I wanted to split off a channel that talks about that and the cultural aspects, especially surrounding the topic of gatekeeping, of course, and how important it is that we continue that honorable tradition.
Yes, and we'll get into that in a second, the honorable tradition of gatekeeping. We'll get into that in 1 second. So with me, I'm thinking about how I got into Warhammer. I actually wasn't going to tell this story, but I had a very odd friend in college, and he was a nice guy, but he always seemed to have money issues, and I was always wondering why. And it turns out he was a mini painter, right? He did a lot of work, and he sold his minis, Warhammer minis, and spent a lot of time painting them and selling them, and made a good dime on that. Well, at one point when he was short on cash, he wanted to borrow $100 off of me. So I said, I will let you do that, but you need to give me $100 of collateral. So he proceeded to reach back, grab a box, and hand me over what probably was more than $100 worth of minis, as well as some books. So I demanded that, okay, I'm going to keep this, but I am going to read this book, right? Because it looked pretty cool, and it was Double Eagle, which was the first book I actually wrote was Double. So I picked that one up, read it, really loved the lore, really liked that, and ever since then I was in on it. So weird college friend, but got in through my weird college friend, and really have enjoyed it since. It's something that I've been coming back to for probably at this point almost 20 years. So it's been quite a while. And I will introduce your second channel while we're here in a second. So obviously that main channel, Arch, is for Warhammer lore, and then you started your second channel, which is at a honorable 78.9. Very good here. And you've definitely got you've got a lot of 40K stuff. Certainly still, I would say, predominant with 40K discussion. Definitely expanding it. I mean, talking about Hasbro, Magic the Gathering, which, by the way, one of my longtime hobbies, which I got out of because it went woke.
Yep.
Yeah, and a little bit more broader topics here. You know, Has Been Hotel, you got one in here, and just more general topics. So obviously you've expanded. What made you want to expand and kind of start this second channel and new channel to talk about broader cultural issues?
Well, originally I was doing a little bit on the lore channel, but I figured it's partially YouTube, because back in the day YouTube liked variety content. Now YouTube hates variety content. So it's like, okay, if this is going to have any real shot, it's going to have to be somewhere else on a different channel. And it is important to talk about, because there is a legitimate, concern within our broader culture. So if you want to keep being fans of these things, we're actually going to have to talk about the things that are affecting them. Otherwise, we're not going to have 40K in 10, 20 years.
Yeah. So unless we start bringing it up, it's going to get removed, or at least rather it's going to get changed in a way that it's not recognizable.
Yes.
Speaking of recognizable, guys, I just put up in the chat for you guys on YouTube, Rumble. Sorry, not sorry. You can just tell me in the comments. But I put up a poll so you guys can vote. Are you familiar with Warhammer? Yes, a bit, no, or for the Emperor? Please choose. Please choose. Please choose wisely. Choose wisely. All heresy will be dealt with accordingly. And let me get these super chats. Weird for $2. It says, Arch, tell Legal about the 40K judicial system. Okay, let me put a pin in this one. How about we get back to that one? I'm not going to get rid of that one. So I'll save that one for a little bit later. But I know about the Arbites particularly. So I'm sure there's more than the Arbites out there. The real Holtzinator says, the crossover I've always wanted. Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate the $19.99. Marcus Squinton says, as an Ultramarines fanboy, I love your Ultramarine Sergeant thumbnail, but seriously, why not be photoshopped into the body of the most based Giga Chad, the Emperor? You do protect us all. Just saying. I feel like that would be heresy. I feel like that edges on heresy. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that, Arch? I don't know.
I should be careful about taking the Emperor's name in vain, of course.
Yeah, see, I think we're pretty puritanical over here. We're not taking radical views. We're not radical inquisitioners over here. We're not going full Eisenhorn. Patrick Kennedy said, this should be a great show. I have partaken in too much heresy, and the sleep demon comes. Catch it with the RPG, the replay gang. Yes, excellent. So yeah, whether you guys are catching this as a replay or live, still appreciate your view. Marksman F17B says, Hail Arch! Hashtag breed kibs. The kibs will not go unbred. Am I not getting this reference? Please explain.
This is an in-joke reference from my audience. Don't worry. It's not meant to be understood.
It's not meant to be understood. Okay. No. Okay. That's better. Weird says, bad Legal. You could have done wait. You could have done re-account to 40k lore? Huh?
React, I think he says.
Oh, I could have been reacting to 40k lore?
Done react to 40k lore. I think that was what he said.
Like a reaction video to 40k lore, like where I'm listening to lore and I'm like reacting to it. The problem is, at least with Arch's videos, because he is so detailed, and that's one of the reasons why I like listening to your videos. If I did a reaction, let's say I did a reaction, I went on Arch's channel and we're talking about, we're going to go over here and I'm just going to pull up one of your videos at random. Okay. So let's pull up your latest one on respecting Horus Lupercal, which is actually heresy. So we'll just pull up the heretical one. Okay. 35 minutes here. So if I did a reaction video where I'm stopping, pausing, and reacting to this, it would probably take me like 3 hours to get through this, because when I react to something and I'm commenting, I'm adding a multiple of what the length of the actual thing is. This would be like a 3-hour video if I was dealing with his heresy of respecting Horus Lupercal. I mean, that's my take. So that would be a very long video, guys, which frankly, sometimes you're humble. I am but a humble mortal. I fall short of the emperor's glory here, guys. I do not always have the energy for a 3-hour reaction.
Understandable.
But I might do that in the future. If you guys really want to see that, if you really truly want to see that, please leave a comment and I will do a reaction to a 40k lore video, particularly following this. If I know there's enough interest, I will do videos like this. Now, I'm a lawyer, a humble lawyer, right? But I do about a monthly anime stream because folks have expressed intense interest in anime, and I happen to be one of the people out there, I guess the only lawyer that likes anime out there in the interwebs. So I end up doing a monthly stream on good anime because people are stepping out of Western media, right? Same thing with Warhammer. If I see a lot of people are interested in Warhammer, I'll do a Warhammer stream every once in a while. Happy to do that. We meme the soy, the cuck, and the tourist, not because it is easy, but because it is fun. You know, I think this is what's missing, Arch. I think it's that last part. That last part is the best part. This is what people are missing. You do it for the fun. You do it for the lulz. I think more people need to embrace the fun element, because that's why you're in the hobby in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
that is part
gatekeeping can be fun.
It can be. It can be.
Cheers to gatekeeping and weird college friends. Yes, absolutely. Cheers. Cheers. Now that the bridge god is here, the little red bridge from where the communism flows should also be brought on as a guest. Devs needs funds for a new chair. Little red bridge from where communism flows?
Another in joke, yes. It's about my friend Dev, or short fat otaku, as he's called on the internet.
Is he a commie?
We call him that, yes.
Okay. So I watched part of your interview, and I guess we can segue here, and I'll get the rest of the super chats later, guys. But this is actually a good natural segue. So I watched part of your debate with the communist or the leftist guy. What was his name? Redhom or something to that nature?
Redhom, yes.
Redhom, right? And no offense to your moderator, but watching your debate, you could have done a little bit more moderating and a little bit more time balancing, because I felt like the time distribution was rather unbalanced. But that said, you guys were really debating gatekeeping. And so I think when we talk about gatekeeping, and this happens very commonly in debates, one of the biggest issues is our definition of what is gatekeeping. So to you, I really enjoyed your definition of it, especially as it applies to fandom. So can you let people know what your definition is of gatekeeping itself?
Well, what's interesting about gatekeeping is that it is, in essence, a bit of the bleeding edge of our current cultural conflict right now. And the definition that we've kind of arrived at is that we're not trying to keep individuals out. Join the hobby, don't change the hobby, because it's open for anyone, but we don't want you to actually come in and start changing it. I need to come up with a pithy, one-liner for it, honestly. do what is best for the 41st millennium, not the 21st century, something like that.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. Do what's best for the 41st, not the 21st. Oh no, that's so good. That's so good.
That might work. Yeah.
It'll stay.
Because that is actually I did a video on this today because Catalyst Games Labs, the current IP owners of BattleTech, put out a statement today which echoed Games Workshop's statement from a few years ago, basically saying agree with our politics or GTFO. And it made me realize that one of the key differences in our gatekeeping here, so ours and the progressive, is that one targets at individuals. Like Catalyst Games Lab is going like, okay, if you say this, this, and this, you're not allowed. Whereas all we're saying is, you as a political ideology is not allowed. We don't care about the individual. We care about the politics of the individual.
Right. And I think when to me, looking at gatekeeping and the definition that I use for it, and then by the way, I want to explain the deranged leftist definition of gatekeeping. My look at it has always been not that you're excluding people having those beliefs. People can have whatever beliefs they want. It's when they attempt to project those upon the median, the hobby, the thing. At that point, right, that is what is to be gate kept. It's not anybody from necessarily entering the hobby. And I think one of the best arguments which you give, which I think is quintessential, is how do you really gatekeep a hobby? Particularly something where all it takes is to watch a movie, read a book, buy a miniature. How exactly would you prevent somebody from doing that?
Well, that was the interesting thing with the debate with Randholm, because as you said, it was theoretically about gatekeeping, right?
Theoretically.
Yes, because we kind of closed the conversation within the first 5 minutes, where it's like, okay, I want to gatekeep these people who try to change the hobby. And he's like, well, I want to gatekeep people who I find toxic. Like, okay, so we agree that gatekeeping is good.
His definition was, and which I thought was particularly interesting, is I want to gatekeep Nazis. That was one. Yes. He specifically said Nazis. And my retort to that would be, okay, well, that's fine. Are we gatekeeping all extreme political behaviors? So are we gatekeeping, if we're gatekeeping BLM, are we gatekeeping radical black separatists? Are we gatekeeping the Nation of Islam on BLM? Are we who are we starting? Are the Houthis? I mean, who are we gatekeeping here from this, and what behaviors do those groups need to exhibit for us to gatekeep them, to keep them out of the hobby for their personally held beliefs? Right? At what point do we exclude somebody? Is it when their beliefs become violent? Because certainly there are many people that, as part of their personal beliefs, believe that violence might be justified at some point under their given belief set. And the ultimate irony is, of course, you're participating in a hobby, in a medium that has a very intimate, I could say it's very clear that 40K is very much steeped in violence. You might even say that it is the definition of violence, because grimdark, the setting, is not but violence. So it's a very interesting perspective there. That was what I heard from him, though. Specifically, he was focused on the neo-Nazis, and did not broaden it out to any other violent group.
Well, I asked him, like, should we ban communists? Because, okay, we have socialist ideologies. Do we ban both the international and the nationalist variant of socialism? And what was amusing, and I just let that slide because I think this already speaks volumes in and of itself. He then started going into minutia. Like, yeah, we can ban the tankies. Like, okay, so we're starting to pare down. Now it's my ideology. Now we're picking and choosing.
Okay,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because
just the peaceful. We only allow the peaceful communists. You know, the ones that gently lead you to the killing fields.
Yes, because the answer to your question is, of course, no. They will not denounce BLM. They will not denounce anything on the left, because all of this stems from repressive tolerance by Marcuse. All of this is extend infinite tolerance to the left, withhold all tolerance from the right.
And that point that you made is very, very clear there, where that's shifting the window. It's shifting the perspective to the point where where under the guise of tolerance, we have shifted the only thing that is tolerable to be the leftist opinion. We've moved everything over. We've completely shifted the paradigm to, well, this is acceptable because it's against these people, and this is not. And you can see that today in our modern, for example, advertising commentary, right? If somebody gets on the radio or TV show in the United States and says, well, white people do XYZ, nobody says anything. It just passes by and is completely an acceptable statement, which is not called out by media at large. Whereas if you substituted white for any other shade or nationality or proclivity or general group, you would be immediately brought to the gallows, digitally and perhaps even legally. I mean, both of these things would be very much fair game, I think, especially in certain states like California, which is probably not far off from Scandinavia in terms of their restrictive laws.
Well, you are correct, and again, this is baked into the entire ideology. Like, it is inherent and codified in it, which is why even somebody who like Redhome, for example, I don't necessarily think he's a bad guy, but he's been pre-programmed. Like, he has a set of ideological doctrines that he now follows, and he probably doesn't understand them. In fact, I caught him quite squarely on that when I was trying to explain intersectionality to him, and he explained, oh, well, it's not just a laundry list of grievances. Like, no, it actually is. We, in fact, have it stated in the book. It is about adding on more points of privilege and of oppression continuously, forever. That is actually the definition of the ideology.
It's the never-ending struggle. It's very Trotsky-esque, right? It's the never-ending revolution. It's the international version. Just never stops revolutionizing because the revolution must go on.
Exactly.
Real quick, is wokeness the fifth chaos god? Arch.
Well, technically, the fifth chaos god would be malice, so it would have to be the sixth one.
Okay, there you go. Learn your lore better. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why is Arch slumming it with a Noblar?
Oh, who knows? Arch works in mysterious ways.
Britt Cormier says, gatekeeping, Yahtzees. Games Workshop is in the business of making money. If they spend their money, let them, they can buy it. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously agree with that. They can obviously buy into the if they want to spend their money to buy minis, to buy books, whatever, who cares, right? Now, I can understand, and this is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Radholm's definition of gatekeeping in that argument. I think the more general leftist definition is it's not really as articulate. I think gatekeeping to them comes off as he was mean to me.
Yes. That is, in fact, their entire definition, because Radholm's his entire basis for gatekeeping was people are using it to be mean. Like, okay.
To be mean.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So this guy's a dick, and therefore he's a gatekeeper.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, but it's the internet. People are going to be mean to you. It's going to happen. What can I say?
I love the folks that get on and the first thing they freak out, brand new YouTubers, they freak out about negative comments, like negative comments on a video or somebody commenting on other videos. They don't like you. I go, that is the nature of the internet. If you are on the internet, somebody is not going to like you and you have to suck it up, Buttercup, because you're just not long for the internet if you cannot take a negative opinion or a criticism. It's not going to be long for, you're not going to be long for this world. So it's something that I think folks need to get more used to. And the fact is, we have a significant portion of the population that happens to usually be of the leftist persuasion that was raised in a way where they cannot tolerate even a modicum of criticism.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And there's also the, we know, we've actually studied this, that on the internet, people will react differently to other people. They'll be more hostile, they'll be more aggressive, because they won't view you as a full human being. Like, this is your lizard brain going like, well, that's just text. I can be mean to text. That's not a problem.
Mhm.
So you are going to have to literally approach the internet in a different way than you do real life. You cannot expect everybody to be polite. You cannot expect them to be nice in their wordage, and you're just going to have to live with it. And on the topic of the Nazis too, the Nazis, right? Here's the thing. If the Nazis were trying to invade the hobby and change it into a white supremacist hobby, I'd be opposed to that too. But all 5 of the currently existing neo-Nazis on Earth haven't actually tried to do that yet, so I'm not worried.
Yeah, thank you for that. All 2 of them, because I realize like most of it is a front, right? And we see that in the United States with our favorite. I'll pull up these guys. I don't know if you've ever seen them marching around, but our favorite federal agents over here, we've got them. We've got this group that is constantly running around America called the Patriot Front, right? Which I always question whenever you see a supposed quote unquote nationalist organization where none of them are willing to show their faces, right? And I'm like, okay, that's because at least 75 to 100% of these guys are federal agents, clearly trying to stage a point. And it's very weird that they appear during the terms of leftist federal administrations, which have made their main point that a certain flavor of supremacy is the greatest threat to the country. Not anything else, not the economy, not a foreign power, but a certain type of extremism that really has not been existing in mass since 1946. It's a real interesting narrative that doesn't really stick to me. And whenever anybody screams Yahtzee, I think that they don't really understand what that means, and they don't really understand that word.
Well, firstly, yes, and also like this also came up in the debate with Randholm, which I found rather interesting because he was talking about, okay, why do we want diversity into 40K into the audience? Okay, so it's like diversity. I know what that means. It's bringing more leftists because repressive tolerance. But the doctrine is, well, we need to bring in black people to interact with the people in 40K. And he was bringing up this topic of a man who de-radicalized KKK members, a black person who befriended KKK clan members and de-radicalized them. It's like, okay, that's cool. What does this have to do with 40K exactly? And I realized only after the fact that, oh my God, he actually believes that the majority of fans in 40K are Nazis and don't like black people. It's like, what? And it's one of those thoughts that just strikes you as like, why did you believe that? Because I've never been to a GW store where there's like a sign at the door going like no blacks or dogs or something. Like this didn't happen. There was no discrimination of any kind in 40K previously, except against the poor, I suppose.
Yeah, well, no, definitely some discrimination against the poor, because in this chat, by the way, 61% are for the Emperor, 10% are yes, 18% are a bit, and 10% are no. So the majority of you are bloody Emperor botherers here. So you'll get the reference that when I say that, look, anybody who says that 40K is racist, that 40K is problematic, really doesn't understand 40K, because it is a very, very diverse universe in which there are many different types of people, including people of all skin tones, colors. Just going to share a little Primarch Vulcan, who would definitely disapprove of all folks being light-skinned,
Oh, God, I remember an article. This was years ago now, the more like 2016, 2018 level, right? And there was the same there, like, okay, if Warhammer 40K is not diverse, the only black people are black people because of solar radiation, in reference to the salamanders. I'm like, how do you think black people turn black on Earth? The sun.
Yes.
Like, yes, correct. Solar radiation, accurate.
If you put somebody underground, like for example, like we were talking about Vrax or other folks, or they're underneath a gas mask, or they're underground, of course they're going to be pale. They are not exposed to sunlight.
Weirdly enough.
It's weird how that works. It's really weird how that works. When you don't get sunlight and you don't really need all that melanin. Really weird. Would that be heresy? Italy did it with the Trump float. Wait, what is it? Huh? What did they do with the Trump float in Italy?
The God Emperor Trump float.
Oh, they committed heresy by calling Trump the God Emperor. Well, that is one of the, I think that's one of the more acceptable. It's not acceptable in the eyes of the emperor, but I think in terms of the memes, I always laugh at that one. And that's one where, just like we're talking about gatekeeping and kind of re-owning gatekeeping, whenever a leftist or people that are anti try to make it bad, I think you need to take it on and own it as a badge of honor, which I think is the power of the gatekeeping argument. The power of the gatekeeping argument is from something that you're being accused of to saying, no, we want to say this is good. I think that's the genius of it.
Yes. And the because a lot of people don't realize this, but the God Emperor Trump float was supposed to take the piss out of Trump, which is difficult to see, frankly.
Yeah. I think I found it here, guys. Okay, let me pull this up for those that have not seen this, because you always need visuals. Now I don't know if this is accurate. Let's talk about the lore accuracy of this. Is this pretty good? I mean,
that's fairly close.
Yeah, fairly close. I guess the thing is, the emperor could project himself as any size, right? Or pretty much as a very large figure. So having a giant float would be within the powers of the emperor, certainly, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, pretty good. Good job there, Italy. Good job there. Britt Cormier said for another $10, gatekeeping their ideology from influencing the game, sure, but let's face it, the Imperium of man is not the best place for anybody. No, it's a very just system in that everybody is in the shit together. Everybody. I mean, aside from a very few places, I mean, we can talk maybe about like paradise planets, which there's very few of those. Or if you're, I guess, some members of the high nobility, but they're subject to their own corruption and interminglings with chaos and other issues. No position is really comfortable. No peoples are completely comfortable in 40K. That's why it's grimdark. There really isn't a setting where it's going to be bunnies and peace and hugging and kumbaya. I mean, that wouldn't really necessarily couldn't exist in 40K. Am I pretty on point here, Arch?
Yeah, like there are worlds that are worse and worlds that are better, sure. But 40K is a universe under constant siege, and a lot of the repression and the oppression that are placed upon the people are necessary to continue the war effort. As simple as, like, it's liberties disappear in times of war, and after about 10,000 years of war, there's probably going to be very little liberty left.
Right, because you've essentially it's at a point at which people can imagine we mobilize on Earth for wars, the largest of which maybe for a decade, historically in ancient times, maybe at 2 decades, 3 max. But when in this world, they've been mobilized for war for millennia, is very accurate. They've been maximizing their output for war for millennia. They've had existential crises, things that would have wiped out the entire species for millennia. We haven't ever really faced anything even close to that scale, even for a brief fleeting moment here as humans. Particularly, we don't have any Xenos that are challenging us or have challenged us at any point, which is the challenge that is faced here. So it's a situation where by necessity, war and conflict are a thing. So any type of wokeism that would imply upon the setting or impose upon the setting some type of peace, some type of good, some type of holding hands would necessarily change the setting.
Yes. And it's also, you couldn't square it with the setting. I had this briefly discussion again with the Red Home man. You could envision like social change in 40K, sure, but would the Imperium survive aforementioned social change? Probably not. Again, this is a world in which the Imperium taxes planets not first and foremost in currency, but in human lives, in recruits for the Imperial Guard. Like, that's the state in which the Imperium is. Like, even the economy of the Imperium is blood, flesh, and bones. This isn't an area where we're going to be discussing free healthcare anytime soon.
I mean, maybe the Tau would be down with free healthcare, but that's about it. But also, part of their free healthcare can involve, let's say, neutering the entire human population of a planet. I believe they did that at a certain point. Or was it a planet or a system?
That comes from Dawn of War 2. No, Dawn of War 2? Yes. Dawn of War 2? No, 1. 1. Yes. The expansion of Dawn of War 1.
Yeah. So good on you, commies, Commie Tau. Cyberhunk 2069 says, is wokeness chaos, and is our only hope a new religion based on the Space Lord and Emperor Elon Musk? Just kidding, just kidding. Is 40K an allegory for substitution theory, though?
Honestly, I think it is more of a commentary on wokeism, because one of the fundamental forces of wokeism is eternal change. It is the eternal laundry list of grievances to keep pushing the political narrative. It can never be good enough, because the moment it is, you don't have a doctrine anymore. You don't have a political claim to power anymore. If your entire argument of put me in power is there is racism, if you solve racism, why the hell do you still have a job? You know, and that is quintessentially chaos, because chaos is constantly trying to undermine the Imperium, subvert it, pull it down, drag it down, change it, infiltrate it deeper. It's actually a fairly good allegory, you know, with certain limitations like the demons, although having seen recent stage shows, demons might fit in pretty well too.
Yeah, there you go. Weird says, one thing the sane and insane agree on, California is bad. Well,
yes.
My concern about that, I don't know if this is as much problem in Europe. You can let me know, but obviously we're allowed to, in Europe, you can move around fairly freely, similar to the US, except for there's language differences, which can form significant practical barriers. But one of the problems we're facing is that all these folks that were facing economic hardships are leaving these states, which tend to be of a regulatory, authoritarian, leftist sort. Their politics tend to angle that way. New York, California, Illinois, and they're traveling to more business-friendly states for economic or job reasons. Maybe they're a corporation relocated, right, to another state because they have better tax benefits. The problem is they do not realize that their politics were the problem in the state in which they left, and they created a situation in that state which made it unlivable, and thus are dragging that to other states. So we see this now in places like Texas, even places like Florida, where folks that come down, they come into the state and they attempt to change it to be more New York-ish, California-ish, not realizing, well, that's the reason why you were required to move in the first place. I don't know. Is there a similar issue in Europe, or is that kind of not a one-for-one?
Well, one of the things is, as you say, they don't understand that there's their policies. A lot of this has to do with the fact that they don't think it's political. They don't think it's policy. When people say diversity, they don't think it's a political statement, because they don't understand the political underpinnings of the diversity idea. Like when somebody says diversity, equity, and inclusion, people go like, okay, well, those are good things. Well, why are they good things? Well, I don't actually know. I haven't thought about that. But this person from academia told me they were good things, so they must be, right? And so when they say things like, oh, well, we need more immigrants, we got to have a humane immigration policy, those words. So, okay, well, that's fair enough. We need a humane immigration policy. And they don't understand then that this has a lot of extra implications. They can't quite follow this to the root. Okay, what does this really mean? Well, it means that we're going to take in an increasing number of foreign people who are not going to be compatible with the culture, for example. And we do have this to a degree, but more on a national level in Europe, with Sweden being the perfect example. Sweden fell for this idea hook, line, and sinker that we needed a humane policy. They had the world's first feminist government, for example. And it took them about a decade or so to realize, holy shit, this isn't working out well. There's enormous criminal gangs rampant in our country now. We have grenade attacks. We have bomb attacks. We have shootings. What the fuck happened? And once they look at that and they start following it back to the source, they realize, oh, hey, we imported a tremendous amount of people that don't share our ideas. These are not humanitarian immigrants. They are people who are vastly different. And in Norway, we managed to save ourselves from most of this because we valued integration first and foremost. So we took in a very small number of immigrants, we forced them to learn Norwegian, to accept Norwegian traditions, and we scattered them all across the country so they couldn't balkanize.
Which is based on studies how you do that. You integrate by taking a very small percentage. It has to be a very small percentage. So wherever it is localized, it has to be less than 10%. So it cannot be more than that on a local basis, right? You require them to integrate to your customs and cultures, and then over time they can indeed integrate to the society. That is very much possible, and in fact, that's what America did for a long time. That's what happened in America de facto for the longest time, is we were integrating. The problem is that people are confusing now migration and immigration. They're thinking that the sheer fact of crossing an invisible line on a map will automatically deem them with all of these skills, abilities, knowledge of culture that allows them to function in society. And well, we know that's just not true, right?
Yeah.
If it's not a thoughtful process, folks will not integrate, but rather form ethnic enclaves, rather form individual areas, which turn into essentially, for example, in the case of Sweden, will turn into a little Baghdad, a little Damascus, right? And one of my favorite news lines from recently, I told this on a recent stream, was there's actually a big issue in Iraq now with Swedish gangs. Did you hear about that?
I saw that. Iraq is complaining about too many Swedish criminals.
Which is hilarious, but if you think about it, it's the perfect crime, because you've got folks that are coming into Iraq that now may know a little bit of Swedish and can use that as a gang language, can use Swedish as a gang language that nobody in Iraq is going to understand. It is absolutely brilliant from a criminal standpoint, right?
And the thing that's important to remember here as well is that this is the difference between the normal people and the political elite. Normal people think like, oh, well, these nice people from Mexico, they're just nice people, right? They come here, they can live here because they're being attacked by the cartels. Okay. But the politician thinks, hold on, if we balkanize these people, we'll have groups that'll probably be dependent upon the state because they're going to live in areas that they don't know the rules, they don't know the language, they don't know the custom. They're going to be isolated. Now we can do our identity politics. Now we can slice off black voters and go like, you're ours now. And if you don't vote for Biden, you're not black. We can slice off Mexican voters. And it's a fantastic power tool for those who are unscrupulous.
But what they're actually learning is that these demographic groups, which they perceived as monoliths, are falling away. For example, we'll use both of those groups you mentioned right there. So the Hispanic segment, first of all, I'm from Miami, right? So anybody who ever has told me that the Hispanic segment votes for Biden has never met a Colombian, a Venezuelan, or a Cuban, particularly the Cubans and Venezuelans, who have seen actual communism and just say no. They're like, we left to get away from that. We are not voting for this communism again in this country. Are fervently on the right-hand side. And then going to Texas, there are folks that are of Mexican descent, but they've been in this country for 3, 4, 5 generations at this point. And they, just like everybody else, don't want folks crossing the border and burdening their healthcare system, educational system, social services. That's an issue for their whole community, and they're not okay with that. And it doesn't make them racist or bad or horrible or a Yahtzee. It just makes them concerned about their personal welfare and how that's being damaged by an uncontrolled migration.
Absolutely. And we see this over here as well, where you begin with a very liberal-leaning immigration group simply because they like, okay, well, I was let in here by this group of people. I need to, vote for them, etc. And then as they continue to stay in the country, they go for more and more conservative because they sit there like, I don't want more immigrants in my country. I think it's pretty nice here, actually. I'd like to not ruin it any further. And a lot of these people also understand, because we had one of the weirdest things, like there's a crime that happened in Norway over the last 10 years ago that had never happened in Norway before, and that was honor killings. This was a completely unknown phenomenon in Norway. Like, there were newspaper articles explaining, like, okay, what is this? What does it mean? Why do they do it? And the Norwegian population was like, what? What do you mean you killed her because of something like that? And that was actually a genuine uproar within the immigrant community as well. It's like, no, you can't do this. You're in Norway now.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, that's not okay, right? It needs to be clear that that's not okay. And the punishment for such behavior needs to be swift and just. We'll call it that way. Because if it is not, that's a problem. That is indeed a problem.
The legal system. So Scandinavia has been incredibly peaceful and stable for a very long time, to the point where we have abolished like lengthy jail punishments. The harshest punishment you can legally receive in Norway is 21 years in prison. It is virtually never handed down.
Excuse me? That's your maximum sentence is 21 years in prison.
Yes. The only alternative that is harsher is confinement, or where the state goes like, okay, you're insane. We're going to check back in 5 years and see if you're not insane. And then they can technically keep you forever. But the longest sentence that you're normally given is 21 years.
So like even a murderer...
Breivik. Oh, yeah. Breivik, Breivik is in confinement. So he could technically walk in a couple of years. Like if he manages to convince that his psychiatrist that he's okay, he could walk. And this was the same in Sweden, where they had no punishments for under 18s because you were considered a child. Now, the gangs came in and figured, hold on. So if we get a child to shoot somebody for us, they walk? Yes, they do. And that became a gang initiation, actual assassinations with children. And the Swedish community were like, you can't do that. Like, no,
but that's an old trick. That's one of the oldest tricks. In fact, in the US, if you watch the show The Wire, right? That's one of the premises for a while, going back for a while, is you have the kid do it because they can't get the juveniles. The juveniles are immune to certain levels of prosecution. Certainly capital punishment, which is very famous in the United States, is completely barred from anybody who's under the age of 18. So put a gun in their hands, send them out there. Very likely they're going to get, certainly they're going to get a lighter punishment than an adult would. And they're likely going to be absolved of their sins at some point when they hit adulthood.
And like, again, the legal system was just not designed to handle this kind of stuff. Like there was even a statement from a Swedish police officer that basically said, we don't know how to handle these criminals. I
think this is a natural segue to we if only we had the 40K judicial system, I think it would be handled a little more efficiently. Just saying.
That's
just saying. So real quick, for those who have been donating, thank you. I see all of you in the chat. 10 Legal Mindset memberships from Marcus Squintus. Thank you so much. We've had a record last 2 months, January and December, for members. We had a members only stream last night where literally 85% of the people attending had been gifted a membership. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for those that are gifting memberships. Those that receive them, please say thank you to Marcus, and thank you to whoever donates them, because it really helps us have those exclusive streams, which tend to be more fun because we can say things that might get us flagged otherwise on a public stream, which is very helpful, because I like having unscripted streams where I don't have to extraordinarily monitor my language. Cyberhunk 2069 set for 20. Yes, I agree with Arch. I guess my real question is, does 40K explain why humanity needs a god? Or will it give in to chaos wokeness? Does atheism, the imperial truth, create an unresolvable void that chaos will fill? It's a lot of questions there. I feel like there's a couple questions there.
There's a lengthy discourse to be launched into there. Because this revolves around Lorgar Aurelian. You said you'd read some of the Horus Heresy.
Oh, I know about Lorgar. Yes. Lorgar is, I think you said, and I would very much agree with this, probably one of the clearest demonstrations of evil and what is evil.
Yes.
In not just 40K, I think in media in general, because I mean, Lorgar was always searching for that God so he could transfer his evil deeds, right? I purged this planet. I killed these people. I wiped out this. I assassinated this person for my God. And at first that he believed that was the emperor, but when he lost the faith in the Emperor, obviously that became the Chaos Gods. That is one of the most insidious and evil things because it absolves you of that personal responsibility. There's a reason why the woke don't like personal responsibility. They hate it because they would love for you to commit atrocities in the name of wokeness, right? Which is their god. So much akin to Lorgar, right? I see a lot of these folks that are doing these horrible, reprehensible things today, doing them in the name of wokeness. I think that can kind of tie that together. Arch, would you add a little bit to that?
Yes, like more and more I've thought about the idea of evil. I think the best definition of actual evil, because you can moralize all kinds of stuff, right? If the Nazis had won, they'd undoubtedly go like, well, we eradicated the Jews because they were evil, blah, 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 you know? You can quantify and moralize all of this. True evil is refusing to take responsibility for your actions. And that is exactly what Lorgar did. He sought absolution because he wanted to be able to do all of these things, but he wanted to shift the blame over somebody else, which is why when even faced with the Chaos Gods, who stated clearly that they were evil, like he was asked, like, what are you going to do with my Marines when the demon was going to take them? Like, I will change them. I will wreck them. I will torture them. I will kill them. And Lorgar simply nodded. If that is the truth, then that is the truth, because that is what will give me absolution, no matter the cost.
Yeah. And he was willing to sacrifice whoever. And the point on the counterpoint to that is having a principle where you are offered something, right? You are offered something that would be of a personal benefit, but you turn that down because you've established boundaries, principles, morals that can stand against that. And what you see is those that would give into that have no boundaries, morals, principles that stand in juxtaposition or opposition to such corruption. They can be utterly and entirely corrupted for the most evil of ends.
Yes. And they will justify that to themselves. They will find their own absolution.
Yes. Darko Luge G said, hey, Arch, good to see you. Always enjoy your content ever since the Vrax series. Same as me. I came in and found Arch through Vrax. Stay strong. Hold the gate. An open mind is like a fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded.
Absolutely true.
Interesting. I try to take it this way. I consider all points. I have certainly, read my enemy, right? I've read stuff coming from the left. I've read Marx. I've read stuff that's on the left. I know my enemy, right? At Sun Tzu, right? I understand them, but am I open to acknowledging that their points are, or do I acknowledge their points as right? Do I let that in? No. I say it belongs over there. I'm not going to silence your freedom of speech. I genuinely do believe in freedom of speech, particularly as an American. I believe in very, very aggressive defense of freedom of speech. But at the same time, I understand that when you bring things into a hobby, when you bring things in to the hobby itself, it changes it. I can look at right now in your video here. I just want to show this for those that didn't see it earlier. But you've got right here the Magic the Gathering wokeness, which used to be such an amazing series. I played Magic for years and years and years. I got in at Arabian Nights. I got out probably about 9 years ago. Sold everything. But of course, now they're falling to that poison of, okay, we're going to make Lord of the Rings characters black, which is,
and
we're going to make out
white.
And exactly. Really doesn't make much sense. And shows their kind of angles there. I believe they've also like added pronouns to certain cards. There's a lot going on there. But that certainly shows the fall of it. And we've also seen, if you want to say fallen hobbies, fallen areas, things like Star Wars, for example. We've had this conversation. Star Wars is long since dead, but I think folks that are in the 40K community can look at Star Wars and say, do you want it to become that? Because that is what it will become, where it is a withered husk, where the only thing that's really left are a bunch of Reylos that are interested in the current series. That would be, for example, I think the equivalent of, you're going to have like maybe 10 or 20 folks that are simping for female space marines, right? That there's going to be a very small slither of folks that are down with that would be left over. But the vast majority of the 40K fandom, I believe, would reject that. I really would reject that and exit or be turned off. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. Because, again, we can actually quantify this now that we know what we're dealing with. Because I, too, have unfortunately read some of the opposition's writing. I had to fight my way through Kimberly Crenshaw's ideas on race realism, and that was
painful.
God help.
Painful, I imagine, yes.
But you can sum this up very easily. Like every institution, every structure, every hobby, every organization, everything has a framework, and most of them require you to take some kind of oath or promise before you enter it, like taking the bar test or taking an oath in the police force or political office. And this is to ensure that you will enter into the structure with the intent to benefit it and not tear it down, and to sift out those who have the structure's bad interests in mind. The problem with the hobby is we have actually allowed in a lot of people who don't subscribe to the idea that we're going to do what's best for the hobby. We are going to do what is worst for the hobby. We are subversive elements. There's also what gatekeeping about is going like, okay, you can come in, but you're going to have to say that you're going to work for the benefit of the hobby rather than against it.
Yeah, for the good of the hobby, right? And you are not going to try to change it.
Yes.
Period.
As another famous American once said, rather pithily in this case, a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Absolutely. And if you've got a faction that is attempting to fundamentally change the lore, fundamentally change things, that is not great unless they're talking about changes that might be necessary to modernize, to change it up. For example, I think you gave a great example of like updating the Necron lore because it didn't make much sense and was confusing, right? There are things, for example, when you have been going on as long as Warhammer, where some lore from the original books conflicts with the modern books. So you've got to sometimes reconcile that. Either you ignore the older lore or you come up with some thread that ties between the two. Those are the sort of quality of life changes that I think we can be more on board with because they're in tune with, they can make sense within the actual universe, within the actual lore, versus I am taking my modern day politics and I want this, nay, I demand this to be ham-fistedly planted in the hobby.
Yeah, again, it comes back to do what is best for the 41st millennium, not the 21st century.
Boom.
And in the case of the female Space Marines, as they have admitted, I did a video on this on the second channel, where one of their sides simply said, I don't care about female Space Marines. I'm asking for special privilege for me and mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, there you go. It's nice to see you admit it.
Yeah, at least they're being honest, right? Like, like at least tell me what you are. At least I can deal with that in a little bit more of a straightforward way. I have a bigger problem with people that try to pretend they are not doing that, but when they are indeed doing that. If they told me, no, my goal is to subvert and destroy your hobby. Well, I appreciate you telling me. I am going to stop you. You are an absolute evil, right? But at least I appreciate you telling me. It's like when people, we have, differences between, cities and places in the United States. Southerners will use the expression, bless your heart, right? And that is often used as a way of saying, well, you're actually retarded, but we're going to say, bless your heart. Oh, look at you. You're a very special child. I actually prefer even the direct way, even dare I say the heresy, the New York way. If people just tell me, fuck you, I'm more okay with that. I'm more accepting of that. That's how it was for me growing up in Miami. Folks would just say, F you. I know where they stand. There's no question on where they stand because they are not trying to insidiously place themselves behind me. Now, quick question here from the Real Halsinator. My partner just got me an Attack on Dead Men shirt from Sabaton. I love how pretty much it's just a gas mask. Hail the Death Corpse of Krieg. Also, Arch, do you have a merch shop?
In the middle of transitioning to another merch shop at the moment, actually.
Okay. Now, People say, what about you, legal? I technically do. Shout out to Patrick Kennedy, who I think is passed out at this point. He was really the guy who was helping me with this. I do have a merch shop. It's in my description. This was back when I'm covering the Courtney Clenny murder, which I deem a thought crime. So the more than just the tip hoodie right there. You've got a lot of other legal mindset tank tops. You have Amber Heard stuff that's up on here still, because God, it's been a while. You've got the MAGA horse that's up there. Hasn't been updated for a while, but there is a lot of good stuff on my merch shop. If you care to go peruse it, Danielle will drop that link in the chat. But I should update that. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. We should get some new merch. Now, what the hell are they talking about here? Arch, the real Holzinator says, remember the Austrian painter in that tabletop turning? I know.
Yes.
I guess, are they referring to somebody who was cosplaying as an Austrian painter, or what was going on?
So the backstory of this was that one of the reasons why Games Workshop put out their so GW released a statement saying where they basically denounced the Imperium of Man, saying like
What?
Warhammer 40k, or was the Imperium of Man is about hate, 40k is not, like in Games Workshop. It was the usual virtue signaling, diversity.
They denounced the Imperium.
Yes, they did, straight up.
Wow.
And this was in reaction to a Spanish tournament, a non-official Games Workshop tournament, where one of the players showed up and he had a T-shirt with Franco-ish iconography on it. So, fascist in essence.
But although we can argue, we can actually make a really strong debate, and I think I saw a good video that Franco is not, people should really look. I'll just say this: people should look into Franco because there were some differences with Franco.
Oh yes,
right. And that conflict, just like all conflicts in countries, is unique to that country. So people, instead of lumping all of these things together, should look specifically at that conflict and look more closely at the version of history you were told about that conflict. But that being said, please continue.
Well, Franco was definitely more inspired by Mussolini's fascism than Hitler's Nazism, but obviously regional differences. And so he registered himself under the name the Austrian Painter. Now, Hitler, of course, was an Austrian painter. So it's a subtle way of saying Adolf Hitler. He caused several of his opponents to rage quit. When he showed up, they were like, I'm not playing against this guy. And they seceded the match. So he won. And this became a huge outrage. Where
That's kind of funny, though. It's kind of funny, though.
It is. It's hilarious. Like, the Nazis are playing. And I'm sitting there like, that's a fantastic strategy. Like, let's codify this. Let's have everybody show up with the most offensive shit they have. We're like, okay, you're going to play?
That's freedom of speech. And here's what you do. Here's your solution, right? Here's your solution. Beat him in a game. Get good, scrub. Beat the Yahtzee in the game. If you have a problem with it, beat him. If, the Trotskyist rolls up, the tanky rolls up, beat him in a game. In fact, my quote unquote buddy, right, who would vacillate between tanky behaviors and other extreme authoritarian leaning behaviors, right? Beat them in a game, beat them in the game, right? Not rage quit and walk away like a butthurt scrub. You need to actually just get good and do it, right? That's what you should be doing. And doesn't that prove it, right? If you want to, prove your ideas, prove it in battle, whether it's verbal debate, you debating leftists, or whether it is actual battle like 40K.
Well, like they keep saying, let's punch the Nazis. Well, here's your opportunity. What did you do when faced with it? Well, you looked at the Nazi and thought, well, I'm offended. I can't fight this. I'm just gonna have to leave. Psychological warfare at its finest.
I surrender. Weird for Australian 5 dropping another way. Says legal, easy way to win a 40K tournament. Put one unit on the table. Hire an Asian night worker to give your opponents lips if they forfeit. That might also be a strategy. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Arch, but the gender demographic probably is in the upwards of 95% male.
Overwhelmingly male.
Yeah, I mean, I think even 95 might be me being generous.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's because it's as you mentioned, like this is a very grim dark setting. This is very specifically aimed towards the boy idea, right? The heroic last stand, the fight against overwhelming odds, the brutality of it all. This is not a setting that the majority of women are going to look at and go like, well, that's appealing.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just gonna say, yeah, no. Was this an actual? So was this an actual? I found this right here. This survey. Did this actually go out? So this is biggest Warhammer tournament in Spain. Allows a guy with Nazi symbols on display to play. Was this an actual thing or no? Did you attend Warhammer 40K gaming events or tournaments? Yes, but I had to drop out because of Nazis. No, because I don't want to, because Nazis playing Warhammer. No, but I'd like to ban the fucking Nazis from tournament. I
No,
don't think this
it was
is
not
real.
a survey that came out, but
No,
I'm
I
imagining they're
don't think that's
memeing on
real.
it.
Yeah, that's definitely a meme. Okay, thank you. I was like, that cannot be real. That was not. That's too much. It's too much. Okay, real quick. I see Letty needs to leave, so I will get your message. Says, and I'm going in order from highest to lowest, generally. But can you pull up my first message before I pass out? Plus, I love your content, and you got me into reading Berserk. I am going to have to buy the hardback books by book now. So thank you. No, you're welcome. Berserk is an excellent series. Anybody who says anime is for children has indeed never heard of Berserk. So I will grab your first one. This is your first super chat. Can Arch answer 3 questions? Number 1, why are liberals possessed by any chaos gods? Number 2, where can I watch you and Sargon frequently? And 3, what is your favorite anime?
Liberals possessed any... Why are liberals possessed by any chaos god? Well, it's because, like, much like the average cultist, they have no idea what they're actually worshipping. That is the core of liberalism. Unawareness. Like, because if you realize what they're doing, you're probably going to get disgusted. It's like if the demon is like, yes, I'm going to eat your children, you might not summon it. But if you don't know that, and the demon is like, I'm going to give you lots of power, well, that sounds like a good deal. And for nothing, too. Whoa, free.
Why not? Why not?
Why not?
I mean, might as well, right? Where can I watch you in Sargon? Do you collaborate? I mean, people. So after you, Sargon was the most recommended to come on. I didn't have him personally. I have connections that have been on with him, and certainly done like miniature painting streams. Of course, I think I'm very glad to bring you on as my first guest to talk about 40K, and I think your depth of knowledge, not just with the lore but with the culture war, really makes it great. But have you collaborated with Sargon in the past?
Oh yeah, he's a close personal friend of mine.
Oh, good. Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
Sagaruni would probably be happy to go on, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm sure we could have a really great conversation about 40K. And
you see some of his model painting. It's excellent.
No, I've watched some of the streams. I watched part of the streams, particularly when they're like discussing other topics as they're painting minis. I think it's very cathartic. I think people that do it, they find a lot of pleasure in that. Now, I have no talent for that, so I would not find it as cathartic. I would find it indeed frustrating and probably gouge out one of my eyes. But I understand for those that are inclined to it, it is indeed quite relaxing. And for me to watch it is quite relaxing because I see that those people are having a good time. They're relaxed. They're enjoying themselves. And I like to see people that are in that state of mind. I think it's very refreshing. So yeah, no, it's kind of funny how there's links with hobbies can come together where, people can come together who are from across the world, different places, different times, but come together to bond over a hobby, much different positions, right? In the world might otherwise never meet, but can come together. Third, what is your favorite anime? Do you watch anime? Are you a fan of anime at all?
I do. Like Berserk is an excellent manga, for example. It's really sad that Kentaro Miura decided to waffle off this mortal coil before actually finishing the damn thing. Too much idle master, not enough writing. But favorite anime? Like, I don't want to say Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, but I kind of have to.
It's kind of a really strong pick. It's a strong pick.
It is, in my opinion, one of the best pieces of entertainment, full stop, ever produced. So yeah, I'm probably gonna have to go with that one.
I would definitely endorse that. I'll just name a different one, and the one that kind of brought me in, like really brought me in, was Cowboy Bebop. So that for me was very accessible. And whenever I recommend one to normies who do not like anime and want to watch something that is different and good, I oftentimes recommend Cowboy Bebop. Also, the voice acting in English is good. So introducing people with something like Full Metal Alchemist or with Cowboy Bebop that has good dubs can often help people transition to the master race of subtitled anime.
Yes. And I'm sure you'll recommend the Netflix version as well.
Absolutely. And that was Arch. That's my feelings on that. Man says, I got into Warhammer when Star Wars went woke, and I was looking in Graindor, some other lore 5 years ago, and Arch and Lutkin 09 were my introduction. 40K lore, this mesh of my YouTube orgasm. A lot going on there, but so many good lore channels. I mean, it's to the point where, you know, if you ever want just something in the background, I think some of those 40K lore channels are fantastic to listen to. If you're into 40K, you can just essentially get a book for absolutely free. The lore is essentially a book for absolutely free. You can just have on in the background. It supports people that are creating good content, telling good stories. It's really, really fun. And I love the speculation that is left open by a lot of this lore still being out there. I've listened to the theories. I may have imbibed a smidgen of heresy when I listened to Is the Emperor a Chaos God? I mean, maybe, you know, I've listened to those lore theories. I'm not saying I agree with them. In fact, I would dissent strongly. But there are some really crazy theories out there. And that's what makes Warhammer fun. To me, that's what makes the world building in the world of 40K so interesting, is there's so many threads out there that you can follow.
There is. It's a vast and interesting universe.
Let's see. Leftism is the real world chaos. Change my mind. No, I agree.
Impossible.
Yeah. Future Conflict says, great to see Arch on with my favorite Asia bro, Shyster, exposing the feds, cosplaying as Yahtzees. Yes, absolutely. What I love about YouTube, and one of the things I love about being a creator, is being able to collaborate with folks that people would never imagine, right? You know, as a lawyer, when I'm talking about 40K or anime, I would never do this in the practice of law. I would never do this in the normal course of a legal practice, be sitting around and talking about 40K. But here we are, and it's good to be here. Funny how no patriots know who the fuck Patriot Front is. Fed's gonna fetch. Very true. For real though, I think you'd like Short Fat Otaku. He makes thought-out videos like his recent video on liberalism and his others on Gramsci. Do you know about this creator?
Yes, he's another personal friend of mine. Dev, we call him. Short Fat Otaku. Also known as the Little Red Bridge across which communism flows.
Okay, got it. Oh, perfect. All right, well, there you go. I'll check him out. Thank you very much, guys. Murgot says, hey, Legal Mindset and Arch, gatekeep for the Emperor. Absolutely.
Gatekeep.
Marcus Quintus says, if Game Workshop works to create a diverse and inclusive environment, they should lower the cost so more people can enjoy.
Well, there's where we find the limits of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Diversity has a price, motherfucker, and the price is really expensive. Arch, what's the average cost of an army right now? Like, if you're coming in and you're, and I don't want to get into like what's the bottom of the barrel, because I've heard you could put together some pretty bottom of the barrel sets. But if you're, let's say, an average Space Marines chapter, what would that run you right now?
I haven't checked out the prices in a little bit. Let's see. What's the price of like a starter set now? Let's see. A combat patrol is about £100. That's about what, 500 points? So let's say from 200 to 500 pounds, $300, $600 circa.
Okay. 600, so about 600-ish is probably like the cheapest you are going to get into this. with the absolute basic. Does that include paint? Are those pre-painted?
No, that does not include paint. And GW is, of course, what... Games Workshop. Seriously, don't use Games Workshop paint. Just buy any other people's paint. Like, Games Workshop will charge you like $10 plus for a pot of paint if they can. It's awful. Absolutely awful. Like, I think some of their specialty paint actually runs like more than $10 for a 200 milliliter pot of paint. Like, you could probably purchase silver for a comparable cost.
Yeah, I was like, what is it? Is there actual gold in this paint? Like, it's been blessed by the emperor personally. I mean, what is the reason for paying that price for paint? That's ridiculous. But of course, look, I understand to a certain extent they've got a business to run, but then there's extortion, right?
Yes.
It passes a line. Weird says, legal, what if you react to shorter stuff? What about Old Man Lore and Pancreas No Work? Your thoughts on Old Manish 5-minute lore? I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll defer to Arch on that.
I haven't seen it either. I watch nearly no YouTube anymore. Too busy with my own shit.
And by the way, Arch, this is what I find that people don't understand about creators. They actually presume that and mind you, I've watched a good number of your videos. I have not watched all of them. It would not be possible for me to conduct my show if I was watching everybody's videos on YouTube. In fact, the only way I find out often what people are talking about is either because I am doing show prep, in which I do try to do a little bit of research on what they've been talking about lately, whenever a guest comes on, like Arch or anybody else. Or conversely, somebody sends me a clip or a timestamp where I can specifically tune in to the relevant 5 or 10 minutes, which is usually all I have to check in on an actual issue. So it is very rare for me to know, but people always presume that I know everything that's going on with every creator that I've ever interacted to. It's very weird. But yes,
we've got time for that.
The good stuff takes time. When you're making a multi-hour lore video, that takes a little bit of time. Brick Cormier says the best part of 40K, just like the movie, the good, the bad, and the ugly, there are no good guys. There are just levels of not trying to kill or backstab me right now. Would you agree with that, Arch?
Well, yes, and no, like a
little bit of
equivocation. A little bit of equivocation, because everyone is acting in their own interest. Like, the Tyranids want to eat you because, well, otherwise they'll die. The Imperium wants to stop the Tyranids from doing this because otherwise they'll die. Like, goes down to the definition of evil, doesn't it? Because everyone can moralize their own evil deeds if given enough time. Like, even the left believe that what they're doing is in the best interest of everyone.
Okay. So the left is the left is like the Tyranids, right? They are eating and destroying everything in their path. Any biomass they will consume, literally any biomass they will consume. However, they're doing it because they don't want to die. If they stop this woke train, well, then it all falls apart, right? The whole narrative falls apart. Everything falls apart, falls by the wayside because it's inherently false, right? Now, there are shades of what one might call good, right? Versus, there are people that are less, let's say, interventionist, right? You could say maybe more strategic about where they intervene, but that wouldn't make them good, right? That doesn't make them good or necessarily bad. In any circumstance, let's say the Tau, right? The Tau are often sort of one of the Tau are essentially space communists, right? And they are all about the quote unquote greater good. So at some point when the greater good demands a horrific act, they are indeed willing to do that horrific act. So
by definition, any action is justified in the name of the greater good.
Yeah. And all of them have an argument. Now, some of them are more what we would call classically evil, right?
Yes.
So they represent disorder. For example, the agents of chaos, right? Chaos in and of itself is disorder. So you could say that would be classically evil, but does that make it necessarily good or bad? Well, there's those that might qualify that chaos is good, right? There's people that could go out there and justify and stand for the actions of chaos. Of course, that would be heresy. Tuska Demon Slayer is pretty happy.
Okay. He is.
There we go. Here we go. I eat Gene Stealer ass. Okay. What is your guys' favorite faction or chapter? I love my Blood Angels. Well, go ahead, Arch. I actually have not heard your favorite chapter.
I got to go with Blood Angels too. Like space vampires. That's just awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I mean, Sanguinius was also like one of the coolest Primarchs. Like just having that out there, is pretty cool. Okay, I will go with, and maybe people will hate me on this, but I will actually go with the Grey Knights because of that direct, like, kind of Imperial lineage, because of the kind of lore and the access to certain things that other folks are not there for. So I'm a bit of a Grey Knight fan. Definitely a Grey Knight fan. Space Wolves are up there too. But Blood Angels are pretty fucking badass. Not gonna lie.
But yeah.
Did you read my super? Got distracted for a second. I've read a lot of your super, Cyberhunk, so I think we've got it. At first, I was going in order from largest to smallest, but now I'm going in chronological because we've kind of winnowed the largest ones down. Call, not California. Call? Is Call a place in...
Call? As in Belisarius Call, perhaps?
Maybe. Oh. Okay. Well, yeah, Belisarius, yeah. Shout out to the Mechanicus, right? Christopher Brown with Kiwi $2 says, "Hail, Arch Christ, our Lord and Savior."
Hail.
I don't know if you go by that one. Eclipse Warlord says, "I missed the member stream because I was sleeping. Catch the next one. I will do at least one a month, but actually I did 2 a month. I may set a goal where if we hit a certain number of members, I will do an additional member stream, maybe something like every 500 members. I'll do an additional member stream, or 200 members or something like that. I'll do an additional member stream. Let me think about that, but I definitely will do more members only streams because as there's more members, I want to offer you guys some more value." Weird says, "Are we going to get into Conrad Curse?" Well, there's a lot to get in with Conrad Curse, isn't there?
Curse did nothing wrong. He brought law and order to his planet.
Indeed. Archcast, Disney rant when? Have you done on Archcast a Disney episode?
Sort of, yeah. We covered the California document where they went over all of the nefarious deeds of Disney, and I cannot foresee a future in which Disney's allowed to continue to operate. I mean, they have willfully abused California regulation so enormously at this point that especially with DeSantis also now, I think, officially dropping out of the presidential race, like, it would make a lot of strategic sense for him to go home and, well, beat the shit out of Disney.
Yeah, so in Florida, so I'm a Florida attorney, and Disney World, which is our largest property, is in Florida, and that's what I've been primarily covering on my channel. I've actually shifted to covering that because it happened to be my weird, random legal area of expertise. Generally, I would speak as a generalist, as a lawyer, on topics broadly, topics that are of my concern, but I happen to be this weird property lawyer that actually created these special districts, much like they had their own little government in Florida, which the governor has disbanded, and there's now a giant legal battle over. So in a weird way, this super niche area, which I thought would never be relevant for YouTube, is now extraordinarily relevant. And I've been talking about it for the past years, covering that case update by update. So certainly if you ever, and I'll extend the offer here publicly live, so I can't rescind it. If you ever would like to do a live stream talking about Disney stuff, I'm always happy to join you on that. If there's any sort of big update
take that into consideration
to the case or anything else like that, happy to talk about that with you. Xenothium 15 says, "Hail to the bridge god. Great to see the two of you collaborate. Andrew, you should come on Archcast sometime. There's a little red bridge to cross." Oh, thank you so much. And look, it's predictive. I actually didn't read this next chat, but yeah, happy to if Arch ever wants me on. We in communication, so can toss me a line. Crusader Saracen said, should get Sargon onto eventually. Yes, we'll look into that. Sullen says, hail to the bridge god. Praise, brother Andrew. Thank you so much. Mario Trujillo says, third generation Mexican here. I will say that something is wrong with the second generation. They seem to think all immigrants are the same in my personal experience. That's a fallacy. I mean,
there's a lot of interesting things with the immigration thing. There was a survey in Norway a while ago where they found that the second generation of immigrants often actually turned out to be more, what would be the word, nativistic? Like nostalgic for their homeland than the first generation. Because a lot of them were raised speaking their language and were like, okay, well, Iran sounds like a great place. Because my parent was like, oh, yes, I really liked Iran, except for, you know, the incredibly oppressive regime, etc. And then the third generation became more like Norwegian native again, where they were like, yeah, no, Norway is pretty chill. And I've heard more about Iran now, and I don't think I like it. But whether or not that translates to other areas, I don't know.
Yeah, it may or may not. May or may not. Love a Arch and Razor Fist crossover. Has that happened?
We did do one of those. I brought him on the Archcast
awesome.
a while ago now.
Awesome. Dehako says, really good analysis on hobbies affected by current cultural trends. Food for thought. Yeah, this gatekeeping issue, I wanted to speak about that first and foremost with Arch, because I don't care whether you're in 40K or not, although you should get into it because it's a really amazing lore at the very least, right? I mean, I don't play, but love the lore. I think it's a great thing to consume, and the books are not woke, so getting into those is a-okay. But this is going to come for everybody, right? You know, first it came for Star Wars. Now it's coming for Lord of the Rings. We're going to allow it to happen to Warhammer, right? Because they will Rings of Power. They will Rings of Power Warhammer if you are not careful, which actually I'll segue to another super chat here, which was going to bring up the second topic I really wanted to talk about, which Letty says, for both of you, what character would Henry Cavill be best used for, and what story would you want Henry creating? So this is actually going to be my second topic. So I want to use this to naturally transition to, of course, the future Amazon 40K series. Now, I believe the top two candidates, and everyone I've spoken to, every video I've seen on it, has put it to two scenarios. One of which, they've completely ruled out the Horus Heresy because it is too complicated, involves too many people, the scale is too large. So they put it between two individuals, either the Inquisitioner, Gregor Eisenhorn, or my boy, Caiaphas Cain. Is that fairly on point for you, Arch, those two scenarios?
Yeah, I think Cain would be an excellent introduction to 40K for the majority of people. So I think that would be the smartest road to go.
Can you explain why, please?
Well, because Cain approaches 40K from a far more humoristic standpoint. Like, it's about being funny. It's more about humor. And then the gritty, grim darkness is a little bit more in the background, and then it comes into focus during the action sequence, of course. But it's also very true to the lore. There's no part of Cypher's game that I can remember that is like standout, not lore-based either. It's been a while since I read it. So, but it would be a nice, easy introduction. You'll be introduced to it. You'll be like, okay, that's funny. And then you'll be interested in the rest. It's an excellent hook, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, Caiaphas Cain, I think the one thing that makes it very identifiable, and by the way, that's what I would vote for as well. I would vote for Cain. And they can also get, in a weird way, it might please Amazon because they get a strong, powerful, independent woman in the form of Amberly Vale, which is lore consistent, which is absolutely not conflicting at all with the lore. No issue with Amberly Vale at all whatsoever, as she is portrayed. No issue with her whatsoever in the 40K universe. Totally legitimate character. And you get to have that. And there's no race on her. So you can make her black, you can make her Hispanic, you can make her whatever you want to make her. Amberly Vale, as long as she is hot, I will actually say that. She should be attractive,
Wow.
right?
Current year.
That's the issue. She should be attractive. I don't care what race. She should be attractive because she was described as attractive. So, and her introduction is actually in a very attractive setting. So that should be portrayed through. But getting the humor, but also the action, and also Caiaphas Cain being that character that is humble, is self-deprecating, right? And coming from a perspective of, we're looking at the Astra Militarum, we're looking at the Guardsmen, and that is probably the most relatable for the average human nowadays. A Guardsman, look, they're using a laser gun instead of an M16, but like it is still relatable for those that have been in the military, right? In the shit. And most of the technology that is used by the Guardsmen is relatable to a normie audience. So
Yes,
it is easily introduced, I believe.
definitely.
Yeah.
And it's also a lot cheaper than going full Space Marine.
It's Band of Brothers, essentially. I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. And yeah, Space Marine, going full Space Marine would require CG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Christopher's saying right here, Amberly is explicitly very blonde first book. Is that true? I don't remember that detail. Maybe I'm forgetting the detail there.
It's been too long since I've read Caiaphas Cain.
Let me put it this way, Christopher. I'm not going to be deeply offended if they make her of whatever. It is not going to deeply offend me if they change that. But that being said, you could also have somebody of whatever race with blonde hair, right? So, yeah, that's also possible in the 41st millennia. The Bearded Man says, favorite 40K book. Currently, I'm reading Krieg and creating a 2,000-point army based on the book and a few other books like Eisenhorn. Awesome. Well, hail to the Death Corps. One reason, let me get to the 40K, back to the 40K series. So I think Eisenhorn, my argument against Eisenhorn is it jumps a little too hardcore into the Xenos slot and jumps a little bit too hard into Chaos.
Yes.
It also is a fairly depressing story, which while maybe on theme for Grimdark in general, for 40K, I think it might be better to latch onto a heroic figure first versus another character that may be a little bit more of a, let's say, questionable character, particularly by the end with Gregor Eisenhorn.
There is also the fact that I don't know what has happened to it, but there was supposedly an Eisenhorn television series in development. This was announced years ago, and we've never seen anything of it. No clips, no trailers, no shots from the set. So who knows? It's presumably dead. It wouldn't be the first television or movie venture that Games Workshop has murdered before it saw the light of day. So,
yeah. So yeah, I don't know about that, and that's what is really up in the air. I just think we're pretty solid on it being at least one of those two. Can you think of any other scenario that could play out for the Amazon series with Henry Cavill? Can you just brainstorm any other thing they could do, even if it's a bad idea?
For Cavill, I could also see them potentially doing the Space Wolf trilogy if they want to go for the Space Marines. And there is a reason to do it. Space Marines are the poster boys. They're the most recognizable. They're front and center for Games Workshop. And Ragnar Blackmane allows you to keep a good amount of humor within the setting and also ease the audience in, because you start with Ragnar as a neophyte, as just a Viking boy. And you could, you could do that so well, where you open up and it looks like it's just the Vikings TV show. There's no hint at anything futuristic at all. And then suddenly there's the raid, and then there's the Thunderhawk and a giant in power armor. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Then he's introduced to the Fang. It's like, no, we're Space Marines. Your warfare is nothing compared to ours. If done well, it could be really good.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I can see that. And look, I think there's going to be room for it. But I think from a budget standpoint, you build up to that. And you can introduce that through any other story, right? Because there are Space Marine companions, Space Marine, interactions that happen in both Eisenhorn and with Caiaphas Cain. So you would be able to introduce them slowly throughout the story. Real quick on Rumble, I want to give some love to my people over there in the Rumble ghetto. Occupant 42 says, I think 40K is more of a cautionary tale on extremism and absolutism. What do you think about that, Arch? A cautionary tale on extremism and absolutism.
Vehemently disagree, actually, because the imperial truth, which was absolute, I've spaced the English word now, a rejection of religion, atheism. There we
go. Atheism.
Yes.
State atheism.
Yes, was because that was the only way to defeat the gods of chaos, was to completely wipe out the idea of religion, the idea of the supernatural, and the idea of magic. Because in any universe where those ideas persist, chaos will still have power. So if anything, I actually think it's a glowing endorsement of absolute authoritarianism.
They retcon Demon Calabra. What's Demon Calabra?
The Demon Calabra. That was from the Ultramarines book series. The Demon Calabra is a monster demon womb created by Chaos Space Marines to birth new Chaos Space Marines.
And it was removed.
Yes, because it was literally like a dozen women sewn together, and then you had to sew in the gene seed into it, and it was like, it's a meme how horrible it is.
That sounds pretty bad. It sounds pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
When you ask one dickhead, says pretend, what the fuck did I stumble on, Andrew? You stumbled on a great conversation with Arch of the Archcast and Arch Warhammer on all of the platforms, YouTube, Kick, X, Rumble, all the places where you can find me, you can find Arch. Conflicting lore, the voice wherein a novitiate sister and Amendra Kendall confronted an abomination, now non-null version of a novitiate, who went back in time via chaos to warn them of the Horus heresy. Is this a thing?
I remember this one.
I don't remember that. I have not.
It's a side story in the Horus Heresy. One of the little like mini self-contained stories that you get in like bonuses to other books. And there was indeed somebody who went back in time to warn of the Horus Heresy and like how the galaxy was terrible now, etc.
And what happened? And they're just like ignored or offed or shot.
I think they all died or something.
That's the only way to tie that up, right? It's like, yeah, well, you know, and also I don't like throwing in time travel as a mechanic. I know that it has been done in certain instances in 40K in a sense, limited instances, right? But I don't like it as a general mechanic because once you get that involved, it creates a messy picture.
Yes, and time travel mechanics are usually used to try and push a point of view rather than the story. In this case, for example, like, okay, oh, the future is terrible. Oh, well, how is the future terrible? Well, you see, chaos is everywhere. So, like, the Imperium failed. The Imperial Truth failed. Well, actually, the thing that failed was that Horus Lupercal went batshit. The Imperial Truth was doing just fine.
Mm-hmm. But then the Horus thing happened, you know?
Yes.
Went a little awry.
If anything, the Emperor should have been a stricter father.
Yeah, indeed. Let a lot of them off the leash. In fact, very far off the leash.
Very far off the leash.
Boog says, who would win in a fight? A Star Destroyer from Star Wars, an Imperial Cruiser from 40K, or the one with the sharpest fangs? Hashtag FNAF, hashtag ruin. What do you think, Arch?
Another in-joke there with the sharpest fangs. That's from an anime, Killing Bites, or manga.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay, I've not seen that.
It's not terrible. It's very shonen-y, very shonen battle manga.
But I'm pretty sure if it comes between an Imperial Cruiser and a Star Destroyer, I'm fairly certain the Imperial Cruiser is winning. But I want your opinion there.
See, whenever you're dealing with this, you would have to go through so many variables because
there's other mechanics like that don't exist in each universe, right? So like some Star Wars mechanics that don't include like the Force. Right, which doesn't really exist in 40K, but exists there. But if you assume like, okay, whatever a Psyker is almost equivalent to the Force in Star Wars, you've got to kind of like square that circle, right? Mm-hmm. It's still weird. It's still weird when you're trying to put that together.
Because the big thing here is we have no idea how Star Wars shields would stand up to lance weaponries and vice versa. because Imperial Void Shields function by literally dispersing energy into the warp, which in the case of things like turbo lasers, which fire fairly slow-moving projectiles with high energy, they would probably be useless against Imperial shields. But at the same time, Imperial shields are designed to overwhelm with pure energy enemy shields. So the shields of Star Wars, which are able to deflect continuous bombardment, or at least in theory they are, might stand up really well to that. And then you add in the elements of boarding, and the boarding actions would heavily favor 40k because there's just more people.
More people, and just straight up. If you think the standard Imperial blaster is probably, if you put it as an equivalent to, whatever your standard issue guardsman rifle is, your las rifle, right? If you put a las rifle and a blaster at the same power level, which we can argue and debate that into infinity and beyond, right? You say that, well, that's the best they've got on the Star Destroyer, right? Whereas you would have a lot of more heavy ordnance that's available on the 40k side, and the very comfortable with melee in 40k. Whereas Imperials, not so good. As we're saying, Stormtroopers, not great.
And that's what you get into the whole, like, what are their power levels too? Because in Star Wars lore, technically the Imperial blaster is a fucking plasma weapon, which is incredibly devastating. But in reality, there's no way a plasma weapon can function like that. The thing has no heat venting at all. How the fuck are you firing plasma from this thing? There's also the fact that Stormtrooper armor is supposedly entirely bulletproof. Like, it is supposed to even be blaster proof.
Well, I actually thought I thought it was environmental. Like I was reading that. Oh, it's just environmental protection. It's purely environmental protection.
Oh no, within the lore, Stormtrooper armor is amazing. Like, it makes them virtually immune to solid projectile weapons, and even blasters will only knock them out. Now, of course, the issue is you look at the lore, then you look at every piece of available media for it, and you're like, I don't believe that.
Right. Yeah, they're definitely getting killed by just random shots, right? Including largely that many of their opponents are using projectile weapons, right? Which are taking them out. So it essentially does nothing but filter some sand, maybe.
Yes.
Andrew, would be nice if you.
Senseless.
Oh yeah. Andrew would be nice. Yeah, Andrew would be nice if you could reach out to Tex of the Black Pants Legion and Razor Fist about BattleTech, because Arch won't, because he's a Swede. Is there a Swedish hatred for BattleTech?
There's a Norwegian hatred for the Swedes, and vice versa.
Okay. No, that I understand. Actually, one of my folks who actually helps me out here is a Finn. So, of course, he likes nobody in Scandinavia, right? Because the Finns are Finns, right? And they've got their own thing going on. So very, very familiar with the inter-Scandi tensions, let's say. Ganner stuff, I am 62. So, wait, what? Okay, well, congrats. Welcome. all those of all ages are welcome. Rio Halsinator said, Yu Yu Hakusho will always have a special place in my heart. Yu Yu Hakusho, my brother loves it. It's great. Wasn't for me as much. I think that, look, the cool thing about anime is, unlike modern woke media, it understands who it's for. There is anime that is specifically targeted towards young girls, young boys, teenagers, men, adult women, right? There's anime that's specifically naughty, but it's specifically naughty for men, for women, right? There's all these things. So why can we not have things? If we want to say Warhammer, right, is predominantly male. That is very true. Why is that a problem? Why is marketing to predominantly males an issue in saying that is my primary audience? What people misunderstand is, when there's a primary audience, there can also be secondary audience, right? There can be women, there can be other folks that were not intended to be the audience that are interested in it. But you are not marketing to them. You are not trying to draw them in. If they want to come in, they are welcome to come in, but they are not your primary market. Your primary market is what is 98%, 95%, the super majority of the fandom.
That's the beauty of anime and manga. You have something for everyone.
Literally. Big E is the ever chosen. Okay, there you Next, Marcus Quintus has a question for you, Arch. Arch, who is your favorite 40K creative, and why is it Chapter Master Valrak?
Well, I haven't talked about Valrak in a very long time because
I have to look that up, real for Valrak.
I did talk to him. I brought him on my show and everything to show off his channel. But once it came out that I was not on the left-wing side, he disavowed me very quickly. So I don't know if I like him much anymore, to be honest.
Oh, he was firmly of that persuasion.
Yes, he explained that he did not like to be associated with me anymore. Like,
okay. Quite nice. And I love how all of these tolerant folks, all these folks that are on this side of love, peace, and tolerance are so tolerant that they will not associate with folks that differ from them even mildly in political belief. It's always very interesting. Whereas when I talk to people on the other side of the channel, I don't even say right, but who are not involved in the leftist side, right? Not leftist folks, they tend to have very diverse trains of thought. And oftentimes, if we get into an intellectual discussion, we can have very reasonable disagreements on many different policy issues. And in fact, I often say, as I said on my member stream last night, I really don't trust somebody that I do not disagree with on at least one thing, right? Because anybody else is probably a sycophant, right? They're probably a sycophant if they're just saying yes to everything I say without ever pushing back. In the number of topics I've covered, particularly on my YouTube channel, there are folks that will come and call me out that have been my longtime supporters, will say, on this issue, I disagree with you. And I have always been tolerant of that. And I think that's the beauty of dealing with reasonable people, is they are tolerant of respectful disagreement. That being said, I do not need to tolerate people using ad hominem attacks. That's not great. By the way, I noticed in your debate with Radham, he pretty much immediately resorted to a form of an ad hominem attack against you, like pretty quickly, by insulting, taking a personal insult, pretty much right out the gate of your debate. So I think that's one thing you can notice happens fairly often with folks. Let's see here. Lazarus says, Arch found you through Sargon a decade ago and knew nothing about Warhammer and got into it thanks to you. Now I'm 6 months from being a lawyer. Oh, congrats.
Congratulations.
Do you hear that a lot, Arch? When people contact you, do they say that like you got them into Warhammer? Do you hear that a lot as a comment?
Yes, I have brought a lot of people into Warhammer, it seems, which is very good. I'm quite gratified by it.
That's awesome. One dickhead says, Andrew, never got into video games, but I do enjoy the teaching in them. Yeah, you can learn a lot from these things, even if you never consume them. And that's why I would encourage you to look at stuff like lore videos, books, audiobooks. I think they're very accessible for everybody, 40K specifically, because there's so much stuff out there, particularly the older stuff. I know you probably would comment on a little bit of the newer stuff that's coming out of Black Library, wouldn't you, Arch?
I have not read a lot of recent Black Library. After the Gathering Storm, where they brought in Cole, etc., and the Indomitus Crusade, I was always against GW moving forward the story because I don't think Games Workshop can tell us good story more often than not. And it's turned into a little bit of a mess. Like, I'll read my old school stuff for the while being. Just got through the Gaunt's Ghost series again, preparing to do a series on that.
I am really looking forward to that. Then I just finished that like a couple months ago. I finished the Gaunt's Ghost series. Absolutely love it. Look, people say, I prefer Gaunt, I prefer Kane. They're two different characters. They do
very different
things, very different characters. So when you look at their approaches to things, and that's one of the cool things about the Astra Militarum, is they have commanders with radically different approaches. Now they're both successful, because I believe they adapted to their circumstances and they thrived in them, but they're radically different people.
Yeah.
But both, by the way, and I also think a Gaunt series could be good. Now, I think it would be more difficult than Caiaphas Kane and also have a lot less humor. So that's one of the issues.
A lot less.
Gaunt versus Kane. The Bearded Man says, Dear Ruinous Powers, please do not make a show about the Space Wolves. There are a lot of possibilities for the 40K Amazon series. It could be a completely original series that GW decides is canon. Ooh, Arch, what do you think about them doing an original work?
It's kind of like hedging your bets in a way, because you can't then at least ruin something that already exists. At the same time, this is a problem that 40K has had for a very long time. In video games and in movies, the Ultramarines movie was terrible. They keep getting their Black Library authors to write stories for things that they don't know. Like, Dan Abnett is a fantastic writer. He can't write screenplay. He just can't. Stop doing it. He can't write stories for video games. Stop giving him that. If you're going to do an original story, the hurdle is going to be so much higher immediately, because now you're going to come up with something. So it's like, why would you? You have libraries worth of good stories already. Why would you go through the risk of creating an original one too?
Right. And because there's so much in the tank, and I've found, especially when I think about a series I liked, Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones was great when there was the source material to go from. The second they stepped off the plantation, shit got weird. I don't want them stepping off the plantation. I want them to stay right in the lines of where the lore is. Wherever the lore is, stay in line with that, stay true to that. You can add small bits of dialogue. You can add details where details were left ambiguous. We talked about race. I'm not really going to mind in the 45th millennium if a company of space marines from a hive world it looks a little bit different. Although, like you said, I think if they're not seeing sun, that's kind of a thing. But that said, I'm not going to be overly mad, right?
I expect the Amazon series to be diverse, let's put it like that, because it's Amazon, and Amazon literally has regulations about representation in their contracts.
And that's something they can deal with, and there's a way to deal with that. I'll just put it that way. 40K has a way to deal with that, and they can do that. We'll see if they respect the lore when they do that or not.
Yes.
Cyberhunk says, can Lizzo satisfy a hive fleet? Maybe for a bit.
For a little bit.
For a second. Her biomass is up there. 60-year-old gamer, chess and bridge. Modern games forsake morality and ethics and humanity to level experience by killing hordes of humanoids, demons, and gods. Interesting. Well, hey, listen. To each their own. And listen, I grew up playing chess. Chess was one of the first games I've ever played with my dad. So chess is a very special place in my heart. So never going to knock chess. Christopher Brown says, I met Andrew going on Archcast to rant about Disney. Yeah, that's up to Arch has said he's willing to consider it whenever there might be a slot for it. Definitely. One dickhead said, so we'll listen to the college distortion video of the video game. College distortion? I don't know. Did either of you read or watch Guyver? Arch?
Guyver. No, I know of it, but I haven't read it or watched it.
Yeah, I've heard of it, have not read it or watched it either. So same boat. Question for you, Arch. Mexican 50 says, unlike the red woman and the Romanian, Andrew has read the Disney report and will not leave you down. Archcast with Andrew went, oh yeah, the audit, right? I read the audit in full, right? That's something that I'm very, very familiar with. And it's something that frankly was crazy because folks hadn't read this list of the actual crimes, because these are actually prima facie evidence of crimes that were committed by the Disney controlled district. It was very, very severe, and they provided, with the crazy thing is they provided the receipts, the evidence. There actually is a separate attachment where you can download all of those attachments, all of the evidence. So they have evidence which can be submitted to court. My only explanation as to why they have not filed those charges yet is because they are building the case in chief in whole, and they may be able to bring in Disney on similar charges to a criminal organization like the mafia, which is, we have laws called RICO, which is essentially Racketeering and Corrupt Practices Act. So just like they bring in the mafia through that, they may be able to bring in Disney and even bring down Iger through that if they're able to attribute these to the direction of Disney. So I think there is a criminal case brewing. They just haven't pressed send on it yet. I'm just waiting I'm rubbing my hands together for the YouTube shekels that will flow when that comes down the pike. It is 100% going to be huge, and I'm gonna relish the "I told you so."
Yep, I agree. I see three possibilities. The first is that they're negotiating with Disney to see if they can come to some sort of agreement, for example. The second is that, as you say, they are building a case, because already if they came up with all of this shit just with one report, and bearing in mind, there were even mentions in that report that they were barred entry to district property by Disney employees. It's just
that's like flat out illegal. Like that's not even in a pretend world legal. It's their property. They own the property. You need to let them in legally. When they show up with the sheriff, you cannot bar them. The sheriff cannot exclude them. In fact, the sheriff has to escort them onto their property, which blows my mind.
Yes, so they might be building an even bigger case, because they're like, okay, how much shit is beneath the surface here? And the third might be timing, where I think that DeSantis might have seen the way the winds were blowing in the presidential race and figured, okay, best way to resurrect my career, go home and do the worst thing I possibly can to Disney. And the people will cheer.
Clap those Mickey cheeks. I think it's going to be epic. And I do think a lot of folks think that because he stepped out of the presidential race, he'll drop this. I absolutely do not think so. This is a PR
pinata.
Yeah, it's a gift from the gods to be able to press criminal charges against Disney employees. That's there's no way you can't. And what I think the beautiful timing will be is if Trump wins, which polls indicate he will. Sorry, Nikki Haley. But if Trump wins, you have a Republican SEC and IRS, which can now bring those charges as well. So I would be a little concerned about the IRS and the SEC actually having the backbone to bring the charges during Biden's administration. But come November, or rather next year, when Trump will be sworn in, that would be so spicy. It'd be so good. It'd be so good.
It would. And again, if DeSantis becomes the man to bring down Disney, can you imagine a better ticket for the next presidential race?
It's a great one, and it's a shoe-in. Look, if he doesn't want the presidency again, it's a shoe-in as a senator, right?
Absolutely.
If he wants to run as a senator, which is a lifetime position, he can get that. He can go again for 2028. Nothing's going to stop him from that. He's still a young guy. He could even go in 2032. He's fully capable of going in a later election. Now, of course, I can see somebody like Vivek running against him, and I think that would be a serious race in which the two of them would there'd be a competing interest there.
I like Vivek. I do. I gotta say, but I don't think he has the spunk in the long term, in my opinion.
I think that we'll see, right? With Vivek, it's like we'll see. He proved that he can argue and debate, and he's been very admirable. He's been very admirable, much as you do. You know, you engage in debates. For going out and seeking those folks out and debating them, and even going into their spaces to debate them, which is very ballsy. I don't care to do that most times. I don't care to go into their spaces where they've got all the factors against me, but he did that, and so I give a lot of credit to Vivek for doing that and for tolerating that, whereas I would not have tolerated that. I ain't got no time for that shit. All right. If the board seats were dictated by a strict number of shares, people would actually own the company and make decisions for it. No more golden share stuff, bringing back the 80s and green mailing. Yes, very true about Disney, right? And about companies in general. I think publicly traded companies should be very careful with how they distribute the board, because when you get a non-representative board like you have with Disney, there's an issue. Is Games Workshop a publicly traded company?
I believe they are. Yes, I'm almost certain they are.
That probably is the problem. That's likely the problem. It tends to be that whenever more DEI creeps in, it's a publicly traded company. Tends to be the case. Question for you, Arch. What is the best founding?
the best founding, the cursed fund, the founding, of course, because that's where you got shit like the Lamenters and the Black Dragons.
Okay, what the Black Dragons? I haven't heard of the Black Dragons.
The Black Dragons are the edgy boys of the 41st millennium. Space Marines with giant claws growing out of their elbows, of all places.
All right. Well, that's a interesting mutation, certainly, to say the least. Scorpion Black Dragon says, in 1978, I painted up the entire Brunswick Corp. Nice. Very nice. Adam Wolford says, my favorite 40K book is a Dark Imperium series, but my favorite moment is when some of the Marines were in NERCon and they saw different versions of themselves. I thought that was cool. What's NERCon again? Is that a book?
The Dark Imperium series. I think it's one of the more recent ones, which is why I haven't read it.
Right. Yeah, I've not seen that. Or was it Necron? Necron or NERCon? Maybe that's a misspelling of Necron. Just don't know that one. Robadensa one says, Arch, what do you think will happen with Total War going forward? Do you think Creative Assembly can right the ship?
I think Sega's going to try very hard to right the ship. Creative Assembly has been going in a very woke direction. They wasted £100 million, according to reports, on and I'm not kidding, this is literally from their own mission statement, a drag queen-inspired instruction shooter. So, yeah.
Okay. There's that.
The overlords from Sega Japan, they came over to England and Creative Assembly. It's like, what have you made for us? And they showed them that. And they threatened them with katanas, I presume, and seppuku. And now they're back to making Total War games. So we'll see. Like, the Japanese have done their part with threatening their livelihoods and lives. We'll see if they take the warnings to heart.
Okay. Yeah, and frankly, I do enjoy that when like they come from the homeland and they're like, what have you done over here? In anime, there's the localizer issue, which I've covered, and I think you've actually touched on that as well on your channel. The localization issue. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting because when I speak to people here, I obviously live in Asia, right? And I spend a significant amount of time in Japan and in Korea. They actually don't believe me when I tell them about some of the woke stuff in the United States. They're like, no, that's not real. People don't actually make that argument. And I proceed to tell them, no, people sincerely make it. Now, I will defer that those people may be an extreme minority. I do think the vast average American doesn't agree with this. However, these folks are very vocal and they also have control of a lot of the apparatus of power. So the fact that they have the reins of power actually is the scary part. And I heard a great allegory for the game of Werewolf. You've heard and played the game of Werewolf, right?
I've heard of it, yes.
Right.
If you're assuming the one where somebody's a werewolf versus the peasants, eat, kill, you know.
Yes, yes, like Mafia,
yes.
The game of Mafia, same game where there's two werewolves, the rest are villagers. There's variations where there's separate roles, but that was actually created by a Russian with the intention of showing that an informed minority can always beat or tends to always beat an uninformed majority.
Yep.
And so in that case, you have two werewolves and let's say 10 people. It's still the odds are in favor of the two werewolves, right? Winning the game. And they oftentimes do win the game. It's very difficult to out people in that game. And what I get concerned about is when I see this small group, particularly a small group that has the reins of power, manipulating the masses at large. And I do think, fortunately, there is a turning point. I think a lot of people are waking up. I think channels like your channel, and I certainly try to help with this to educate people on this. And I do see more people that are seeing it and becoming informed, which I think is inspiring. And I actually, for all those that want to feel the grimdark, I think there is some hope. There's some hope in us countering these trends. I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree. Like we have clearly now seen a turn in the culture, and that is, as you say, what we've been trying to do, affecting the culture. And it's still going to take a very long time before the levers of power are in our control, because power is always downstream for culture, of course. And there is going to be a lot of shit before that. Like, things are going to get worse first, because when you have a minority, in this case, the actively aggressive minority, and they start to realize, shit, game is up. We are still in control of the levers of power. What do we do? Let me put it like this. when they were winning, they cancelled us, they threw us off payment platforms, they banned us, took away our livelihoods. What do you think they're going to do when they start to lose?
Yeah, it's going to get desperate. It's going to get real desperate. And it's already, I think it has gotten desperate in certain places where they've had to go into the authoritarian side, right? We kind of see this in places like Canada, where they're freezing people's bank accounts, banning lots of types of speech. Europe has also done this. They're dragging Elon Musk and X into the regulatory war over essentially too much free speech on X, which my response to that was we must defend free speech as Americans and have a president who wants to defend free speech aggressively. And if they decide to place any restrictions there, we should in turn place restrictions on them for restricting our free speech, right? It should be essentially the tariff battle of free speech. If they want to do that, well, then we're going to restrict you and your authoritarian interests directly. So attack them right back on that. But I do think they're coming into a side where they're losing, and they're losing the narrative, they're losing the plot, and it is going to get messy. So I think folks should strap in for a longer conflict. I think this is far from over. The culture war is far from won. Just because the tide is turning, just because it's shifted, I view it like the Spanish Reconquista, right? If you're familiar with the Reconquista, right? At a certain point, it was 100 dudes in the north, right? And they win that one battle where they finally start winning and turning it the other way. But they've still got to reconquer 90% of the country, right? It's still been taken over. We've won the one battle, but to hold the ground, but we haven't reconquered the culture, and we need to do that. Changer of the Way says, I'm late. What did I miss?
About 2 hours worth of content.
2 hours worth of content, just about. Real quick here. One dickhead said dissertation, each voice to sex sucks. So saying you taught it as part of your college dissertation, you taught video games. Okay, definitely cool. Definitely cool thing to have a dissertation on. DeSantis as Trump's attorney general. What do you think about that, Arch? Attorney general, I mean, you're familiar with the position of attorney general in the United States, right? Okay.
I mean, it'd be funny. It may be even because I think Trump has learned a little bit from his first round in office, where he thought he could negotiate with the monster, and the monster ate him for it. It's like, oh, well, they're all smiling at me now. They're all being so nice. I can work with these people. No, you can't. You're going to have to bring in people that are vehemently anti-system if you want to actually do anything with it, because they will shake your hand, they will thank you, Mr. President, and they'll stab you in the back the moment they have an opportunity. DeSantis is a better candidate than most of these people because he's also going to have a very vested interest in that position. Like, he's not going to go easy on people.
No, he has a political interest to advance himself as an individual in the political sphere, and he is very much a guy who wants to be number one, so you can bet he would do the best job. Now, would he take the position? He might decline in favor of being, waiting out his governorship or being a senator or something else. He might not accept it. But frankly, I think he did a great job in Florida, so he should stay there as long as he can in Florida and protecting Floridian interests because the state's become better under him. People say Ron D stay in Florida until 28. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Changer of the Ways. Okay, last but not least, we got Marksman of the 117B says, thoughts on the Pal World controversies. Have you stuck your toe in that, Arch?
Just a little bit. There's a lot of accusations, like they used AI artwork, etc., a lot of which doesn't have a whole lot of evidence to it. The one thing that I think that they should be worried about, and they said in an interview that they're not worried about getting sued by Disney, I fucking would be. I very much so would be. As I'm sure you know, copyright law can be highly interpretive.
Yes.
And a lot of their stuff has certainly been inspired, shall we say.
Yeah, and if not, right, inspired, if not, and this could come out, once again, so we have no evidence of this. We have zero evidence of this. But through a trial, you could get what's called discovery and evidence of the generative process. And if it found out that they were feeding images from Pokemon or whatever else, right, any other series, into their AI to generate an image, there is case precedent to say that is actually infringement, right?
Yeah.
So there is a case. And the other thing people really have to understand, and this is what people got really mad about my video on Pal World, where I said that Pokemon could sue and win, is Pokemon, Nintendo, Game Freak, Pokemon Company, they're all Japanese companies. Pocket Pair, also a Japanese company. Now, I'm an American lawyer, but I have read a lot of the English language laws regarding Japanese copyright law. It is not American law. A lot of the defenses that are available in America are not available in Japan, and there actually are issues you have to resolve at trial, which means you necessitate going to trial. Now, if you couple that with the fact that most civil cases in general settle, including intellectual property claims, they settle, it leads me to believe that Pokemon Company could get a settlement, right? Might be a small settlement, might be what we call in the business a go-away payment, right? But that is still a technical win. On the books, it's a win. So could they prevail? Absolutely. There's a possibility for them to prevail, right? Should they? That's a different story. That's a PR angle. That's a moral angle. I don't deal in morality in that sense. At least I didn't, right? But I may have to do a follow-up because there were so many comments on this video. I may have to do a follow-up stream just to address the comments on this, the moral questions to whether they should sue, because that's a separate question. So that said, I want to, because I know we said we're going to about 2 hours, but before we go, I had to ask you, because I, of course, am a person interested in the lore and the books, but also I am a really big into certain types of games. I like a lot of tactical games. So I know that the game Rogue Trader just came out. So I wanted to, before I get you out the door, if I could get your quick thoughts on Rogue Trader. Is it something that people should pick up? What are the pros, cons? Kind of a quick rundown of your thoughts on the newest Warhammer game.
I think Rogue Trader captures the spirit of 40k very well. I'm very pleased with how they represent 40k. They give it off as in the grimdark way it is. There are some very harsh choices. And now it pissed off a couple of people too, because they're like, oh, can you only be a fascist in this game? Do you have to be the bad person? I'm like, okay, what were you doing? Well, I was saving Chaos Cultists, you see. There's your problem right there. Saving Chaos Cultists is not a good thing in the 41st millennium. So I think they've done that very well. The gameplay, it's very old school. It's clunky. It could definitely be done better in the current day. And it does show Owlcat's limited experience in making anything that isn't a CRPG. Because they've kind of stuck a little bit to the rule set of Rogue Trader, which can be broken very easily. And they've invented in some ways to try and rebalance it, but they could have done better. I think, I don't know, have you played the recent Alien squad-based shooter game?
I have not.
I've forgotten the Dark Descent.
Aliens Dark Descent? Okay, Dark Descent.
It has a system where you have this was actually in a Starship Troopers games like decades ago.
Yeah, I used to play like XCOM. I was like, we used to play like XCOM and games like that. It was very similar to the squad type games.
Yeah, because here you have a squad that moves around the map and engages in real time. And I adored the way they were doing it, because it was still very tactical, still very careful movement required, squad management, etc. And it was very innovative. I really enjoyed it. And I think maybe Owlcat needs to look at doing something a little bit more off the wall rather than just the classical CRPG again. Because the storytelling, they got that nailed down pat. It's just the gameplay is very, I played this in the 1990s.
Right. It's a little bit behind. Okay, got it. Well, look, I appreciate the honest review. For those out there. So on your channel, what can people look forward to seeing? Can you give people a little bit of a tease for your latest stuff that's coming up on your channels?
Well, the Sabbath Worlds Crusade is what's on the Work for the Lore channel now. That'll be a big deal. That'll be a big thing. That's going to take a while. I'm still producing art for it. So that will be the main focus of that channel. And over on the other channel, I'm going to have a video on gatekeeping tomorrow morning, because the whole BattleTech controversy is very interesting because, again, it shows that our gatekeeping is, okay, we're just going to try and protect the setting, whereas the opposition's gatekeeping is we're going to go to the company and have the company try to bar you from the setting. Whereas a very big difference both morally and effectively.
Well, and it's I mean, it literally is. That literally is speaking to the manager. That is the most Karen move, to go directly to the company and say, well, we can't argue with you in the shop. We can't deal with you face to face. So we're going to go around you. We're going to appeal to their sense of diversity, DEI, wokeness, which they may be, if they're a publicly traded company, required to bend the knee to. And therefore, we're going to come and lecture you, you evil, bad fans, right? But at what point do companies realize? At what point do companies realize that this is not working? Because they look at other companies and just see this failing, see people walking away, see numbers dropping. I mean, is there an inflection point for these companies where they say this is not going to work and we just have to ignore them?
I think we're getting there because we are seeing a lot of firings in the entertainment industry this year. I think we're up to 4,000 positions gone already just in January. Like, this year is going to be a bloodbath for the entertainment industry. And I think at this is finally the point at which the voice begins to squeeze the money pocket, because ESG is failing. Investment money is drying up. Trillions are being lost in ESG and BlackRock. The money isn't that easy to get to anymore. So they're actually going to have to, sell us a product again.
And that requires a product that people want to buy, right? The whole issue is they've forgotten about what people want to buy and what sells. And look, when you're in a world of infinite money printing and you can borrow money to subsidize the wokeness, that is totally acceptable. But in a world where limited resources are coming in, where budget constraints are coming in, where you can't just borrow your way out of the problem, you start actually having to please people. And it turns out that what you're doing hasn't been pleasing people. It's not what people want to go and engage with. I think Hollywood is figuring this out as the box office is drying up, as movie theaters as a medium may go the way of the dodo in the next couple of years, or become rather a boutique experience, right? So a movie becoming the equivalent, you going to the movie theater about as often as you might go to the bowling alley, right? For a non-bowler, right? A very unique niche experience you maybe do once a year because it's novel. I can see that being a thing.
Yes.
Peter Vanager says, do Werewolf on YouTube with other lawyers live. I'll take it into consideration. I'll take it into consideration. Maybe not other lawyers, because there would not be. That would be a shit show. Maybe that would be something I'd do like on a birthday stream, right? But how we keep the roles, what will be hard about that one is, how do you communicate to the audience or you guess you just wouldn't tell, right? The audience wouldn't know, right? So the audience is like the extra villager, right? So they don't know, but the werewolves know. Possible. You need a game master. Who's handing out the roles. It's possible. Could figure it out. But that said, thank you so much, Arch, for joining me. I thank you for staying up real late. I know you're a night owl, but I do appreciate it. Love talking at 40K. Hope we can have future conversations, whether about 40K wokeness, gatekeeping, or anything else. And that said, guys, I will be back on tonight with a stream. Might be dealing with the Power World cleanup, might be dealing with other legal issues if the Disney hearing results come through. So it's a balance between those two topics. But I will be back tonight, my time, which is your tomorrow morning. Until then, guys, take care. Stay based.